Okay, pre-algebra class, we're going to continue on with fractions, decimals, percents, moving right into this stuff. So it should be somewhat review here. A little bit of background knowledge going to come into play. We're going to write the decimals as a percent on this one. Remember, percents are always out of 100. Okay, so use the little cheat box up there where it says multiply by 100. All right, we look at number one here. If we say these correctly, that's going to give us a big indicator of what this is going to look like. Okay, so we're in decimal form here. If we say that correctly, that's 18/100ths. 18/100ths, well, what does that look like? Well, as a fraction form, it looks like this. Okay, then we go up to this little box, and we know that percents are out of 100. So this is simply going to be 18%. So if you go to a fraction and you get a denominator of 100, the numerator is simply your percent. We go to a kind of a mixed number here. If we look at this, we have 2.3. All right. Another little strategy you can use is we're going to just by moving the decimal point. Okay. If we look back at number one, if we'd have just moved this decimal point 2 spots to the right and put our percent sign, we'd end up with this 18%. We can do the same thing on this one if we just move 1, 2. Fill that in with a 0, and we're going to get 230% on this example. Okay, so down to 3. Okay, we have a whole number of 1. Well, that's 1.0. Okay, same strategy we used in number 2. Move the decimal 2.2 spots to the right, fill in with a 0. That's going to be 100%. Okay, so just looking at that, how we're changing decimals to a percent on that one right there. Now we're writing the percent as a decimal. So basically we're going backwards. And so if you think about what we did on the previous slide, we moved it 2 spots to the right. Okay, think about what we might do on this one. Alright, 75%. One way to also look at this is, remember, this is just 75 out of 100. Okay, now if you say that correctly, that's 75/100ths. Well, we know that looks like this, 0.75. Okay, so using a little background knowledge, you could go either way you want on this one. Alright, on number 2, we see that decimal point right there. Remember, we talked briefly about how you can just move it 2 spots to the left, so that's what I'm going to do there. I'm going to move it 1, 2, I'll still be filling in with zeros, and I'll get 0.004, and that gets rid of the percent sign there. Moving that decimal 2 spots to the left will get rid of that percent sign. Same thing on number 3 here. If we want to find where the decimal is right now, well, that's going to be after the 8. It's going to be right there, and then we can move it 2 spots to the left to get rid of the percent sign. So our answer here is going to be 1.68. Burger King background knowledge, guys, says a percent is a ratio with a denominator of 100. Okay, so use this picture here. Looks like we have, if I was to count those, I'd have 86 out of 100. Okay, now that's the fraction. We could reduce that if we wanted to, but I want to demonstrate here that we have this fraction. The percent form of that is just going to be 86%. Remember, all percent numbers are out of 100. Alright, and the decimal form is 0.86. Take a minute to recognize that because that's the basis of our whole unit right here. Transferring numbers from a fraction to a percent to a decimal. Okay, more examples here. We're going to write the percent given as a fraction. Alright, now we talked about all percents are out of what number? Yeah, that was 100. So this one's pretty easy to see that it's 29/100. Can it be reduced? No, it cannot in this instance. On number 2, we have 45%. This one, if we go to a fraction with it, this one can be reduced. We're going to reduce both of them by 5, and we should get 9/20. Okay, so we always want to look and make sure we can reduce that. Number 3, we get a decimal and a percent. We're putting that together, and that's okay. We can still deal with this. All right. What we'll do first is get rid of the percent sign by putting 8.5 as a fraction. Yeah, we can do that for a minute here. All right. So now our next step is to get rid of that decimal point. We'll do that by multiplying the numerator and the denominator both by 10. You have to, when you do something like this, you have to multiply whatever you do to the top, you have to do to the bottom by the same number. Okay, so that's going to get rid of that decimal point there for us. All right. And if you remember, we want this in a fraction form. Now we have to reduce. I'm going to reduce by 5 again, and I'm going to get 17 over 200. All right, we're mixing decimals and percents again. Remember, it's just out of 100. So I'm going to start off by going 0.4 over 100. That'll get rid of that percent sign. All right, and now I have to work to get rid of the decimal. I'm going to multiply both sides by 10, the numerator and the denominator by 10, and that's going to leave me with 4 over 1,000. Okay, we're going to multiply that down. I'm going to reduce by 4, and we should get 1 over 250. Okay, now we're going to start with fractions, and they want it as a percent. Okay, like I've mentioned before, percents are out of 100. So if we get a denominator of 100, our numerator should just be our percent. So let's look at this one. This one's going to be pretty easy because I know that 25 times 4 would equal 100. So if we multiply times 4 times 4, 28 out of 100, we'll get 28%. Okay? Doesn't always work out nice and neat on that. As we look at number 2 here, 8. All right, 8 to 100, that's not such an easy transition here. Okay, so what I might do is go to the decimal point first. So I'm going to go 5 divided by 8. All right, you punch that in on a handy dandy calculator, you should get 0.625. Okay, so now are we in a better spot to go to a percent? Well, I think so, knowing that I can move this decimal 2 spots to the right and get 62.5%. Remember, moving the decimal 2 spots to the right is the same as multiplying by 100, and that'll give us a percent. Okay, the other way you could have gone on this same one is saying, going back to this spot right here and saying that correctly would be 625 thousandths. 625 thousandths. Okay, and then reducing. So I'm going to divide both sides by 10. Divide the top and the bottom by 10. It's going to give me 62.5 out of 100. I know when I have a denominator as 100, then this right here is just going to be my percentage. Okay, on to number 3 here. We have another denominator that does not easily multiply to 100. Okay, and so here again, if we just divide this out, remember every fraction is a division problem. 1 divided by 3, that's going to give me something like this. 3, 3, 3, and it's going to go on and on and on. It's a repeating decimal. Okay, now when I have this, remember I can move this decimal 2 spots to the right, and that's going to get me 33.3 repeating percent. In other words, this is going to get me 33 1/3%. Okay, so then a little extension out of that is, what if this was 2/3? How would that change? We We might see that a little bit later. Okay, one more example of this type here. We have a mixed number. Okay, the first thing you want to do when you're into a mixed number here is get it out of the mixed number form. We want to put it to an improper fraction. 2 times 5 plus 1, that's going to get me 11/5. Alright, I know 5 is a factor of 100, and I can make a rule. Remember, if we're going to percents, we just want the denominator to be 100, okay? Because percents are out of 100. 5 times 20 is 100. Do the same to the top. 220 over 100 is just 220%. Percents are out of 100. Okay, so that's how we get that one. All right, last one here. Throw some probability at you. With Joe Bob, he has 3 red marbles, 5 blue marbles, and 4 white marbles in a bag. He reaches in and pulls out 1 marble. Find the probability as a percent. Don't forget that part right there. We need to put it into a percent. Okay, so if you recall probability, we want our target outcome as the numerator. We want our total of all outcomes on the bottom. Alright, so how many marbles here? That's going to be our total outcome. So we have 12 marbles. How many target? What's our target? Well, that's red. How many red? 3. Okay, so if we reduce that down, we get 1/4. Your background knowledge should tell you as a percent, 1/4 is 25%. The other way you could do that with a calculator is go 1 divided by 4, and you should get something like 0.25. 25 hundredths is the same as 25%. On to B now. We have a red or a blue target outcome. Our total outcome is still going to be the same. We're still going to have 12 marbles in that bag. 3 red, 5 blues makes our target outcome 8. So 8/12, that reduces down to 2/3. Okay, we could go 2 divided by 3 here. And we're going to get 66.6 repeating, or 66 2/3%. Okay. So fraction decimal percent basics is all we're doing here this week. It should be mostly review, so take a look at your assignment, and I'll see you next week.